You know, what if the instruction manual for perfect health wasn't some complicated thing? What if it wasn't hidden away in science labs or buried in dense research papers? Imagine if it was just part of the original design for all of us. Simple, natural, and incredibly powerful.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? In our endless search for wellness, have we completely overlooked the very first blueprint? Could the answers we're all looking for today actually be waiting for us in the book of Genesis? Well, let's explore exactly what this ancient text suggests is the original design for our health. So we're going to start at the very, very beginning. The source material lays out something it calls the Eden Diet Blueprint. And this is basically the foundational design for how we as human beings were originally meant to eat and, really thrive. And what's so striking here is just how simple and clear this instruction is. We're talking about a single verse, Genesis 1:29, that acts as the foundation for this entire philosophy. It's a really direct statement on what our food was intended to be from the get-go. So, what did that actually look like on a plate? Well, the diet was made up of seed-bearing plants, so you're thinking grains, legumes, that kind of thing, and fruit from trees. That's it. It was 100% plant-based. No meat, no dairy, and definitely no processed foods. Just whole, natural foods coming straight from the earth. And what's really cool is how this illustrates a concept that modern nutritionists are all about now: eating the rainbow. The variety of colors in this original food plan wasn't just to look pretty. No way. Each color actually corresponds to different phytonutrients that help our bodies in specific ways, like red for heart health or green for detoxification. It's kind of like this ancient wisdom that modern science is only now really starting to catch up with and fully appreciate. Okay, but this story doesn't end there. Not by a long shot. According to the text, the blueprint for our nutrition went through a massive shift after the Great Flood. And it was a shift that had some pretty profound consequences for human health. So, with all the plant life pretty much devastated, the source explains that meat was allowed for the very first time. But, and this is the crucial point, it was framed as a compromise, something that had to be done for survival. It was not the new ideal, and it definitely wasn't seen as an upgrade to the original plan. And the biblical record points to a pretty startling correlation right after this dietary shift. I mean, think about it. Before the flood, on that plant-based diet, people are described as living for centuries. Noah, for example, is said to have lived 950 years. But then, look what happens after. His son Shem lived 600 years, and just a few generations after that, lifespans just plummeted dramatically. This visual right here really captures the contrast that the source is talking about. It paints a picture of two completely different eras, right? On one side, you have this vitality that's associated with the original plant-based diet, and on the other, you see the decline that the text directly links to the introduction of meat. All right, so this brings us to the modern era, and to a central conflict that we all face in our daily lives: the huge, stark difference between food as it was designed by nature and the food that's engineered in industrial plants. And I mean, here it is. This is that conflict in a single image. On the left, you've got the dietary plan as it's presented in the source. It's whole, it's vibrant, it's alive. And on the right, you've got man's processed food. A pretty significant departure from that original blueprint, wouldn't you say? So what are we talking about when we say ultra-processed foods? Well, UPFs, they aren't just slightly modified foods. No, they're industrial formulations. They often contain substances you would never find in your own kitchen, things synthesized in labs, and they're just packed with artificial colors, flavors, and preservatives. Now, the interpretation presented in the source is that these additives can set off this really devastating domino effect inside our bodies. So it starts with something called dysbiosis. That's an imbalance of our gut bacteria. That then leads to a damaged gut lining, which you might have heard of as leaky gut. From there, the immune system basically sounds the alarm, causing chronic inflammation as it tries to fight off these substances it doesn't recognize. And the end result of this constant internal war? Well, it's chronic disease. But the blueprint for health that's outlined in the source, it goes way beyond just food. It really presents a holistic design for total wellness, and it's built on several key pillars that all work together. Okay, so pillar number 1 is moderation and self-control. It's not just what you're eating, but also how much you're eating. The whole principle here is about respecting your body's limits and avoiding the damage that comes from just going overboard. Pillar number 2 is the rejuvenation that comes from rest. The text points out that God rested on the seventh day, which sets a really powerful example. So, from this perspective, rest isn't some luxury you earn. It's essential. It's when our bodies get to work repairing, rebuilding, and strengthening our immune systems. And the third pillar? It's movement. You know that phrase, from the sweat of thy brow? Well, here it's not presented as just a curse, but as a core part of our actual design. It basically integrates physical effort into our very existence, reminding us that, hey, our bodies are made to move and to work.
Okay, so with this entire blueprint in mind, how do you actually begin the journey back? This last section is all about practical, actionable steps you can take to reclaim that original design for your health.
The path back is laid out in 5 really clear steps. First, you start by filling your plate with that rainbow of whole plant foods and then reducing or even removing meat. Next, it's about making a conscious choice to avoid those ultra-processed foods and picking clean water over sugary drinks. And finally, it's about truly embracing rest, not as some luxury, but as a non-negotiable part of being healthy. Ultimately, it all boils down to a choice. On one path, you have trust in the original design. You can see it symbolized by that whole food from a vibrant living landscape. And on the other path, the immediate gratification of appetite, which, as you can see, leads to a landscape of consequence. So the original instruction manual is incredibly simple, but the choice is profound. It lays out 2 very different paths that lead to 2 very different outcomes. The only question left is, which one will you choose?